see here. WBGO. It's hard to dial and talk at the same time. I'm Jonathan. Lindsay's on maternity leave, blah, blah, blah. Let's see if he's here.
This is Joe.
Joe?
Yes.
Are you the one that does the mid-afternoon show?
That would be me.
Okay. Now, this is Jonathan. I'm the one that does the morning show, and you are live on the radio, my friend.
I'm on WBGO?
Yeah.
Wow.
Now, what else is new for you, though, right?
Yeah, life is good. How about you?
Life is pretty good. I feel like we have something to talk about today, Joe, and that is...
I have been counting down the days.
Have you really?
I have been. I have an app that actually tells me how many days a certain day is.
Uh-huh.
So I've been counting down the day to today.
Today, for those that don't know, today is the first day of the Major League Baseball season.
Yes.
And among many other things, I mean, when you know a guy like Joe Buchanan, you could probably tell this just by listening to his radio show, but he's just a golden human being. And there's so many different things that we have the pleasure of talking about from time to time, but very often we get on the subject of baseball. But one thing I think I've never asked you before, Joe, and I think people, some people might know that we're both pretty serious Cubs fans. We try our best to respect those that salute other teams in our listening area. But how was it that you came to love baseball so much? That's the question I want to ask you.
Well, that's a really good question. It was when I was really young, and I only had access to really radio, and so I would listen to Cubs baseball games on the radio.
Okay.
And it just kind of filled a spot in my life when I really needed, I was kind of lonely at the time when I was younger, and so it kind of filled that time to have voices in the background. And the funny thing about baseball is I fell in love with baseball before I even really knew what it was, before I ever saw it. And so I remember when I saw my very first game, it all kind of started to make really good sense.
Yeah.
Oh, that's how that works. Okay. And I'll never forget the first time I was actually like at Wrigley Field, for instance, and you come into the stadium through the gate, and you've got all the smells and all the people, and you're in that concourse area, and you come up those stairs behind the box seat, and I didn't even have a good seat that day, but I remember coming up behind, I think it was like right behind first base. You come up that concourse area, and I saw the field for the very first time, and there were a couple of things. One is it just blew me away that field was the same field that people have been playing on for so many years. But then number two, it was so much smaller than I remember it, than I thought it was on TV. I thought the field was so big on TV, and I get there, and it is a big field, but I was like shocked that I could actually see the outfield.
Yeah, exactly. I know what you mean about the historic value of the game of baseball. I think some people that don't even necessarily follow the game or the season day by day will understand what it means to connect with previous generations. So for example, for me, I had I don't even know how to describe it, but the thrill of getting to go to Game 5 of the World Series for the Cubs in 2016. And as I walked into the Wrigley Field that day, the thing that I was thinking about was the fact that my grandfather, who's no longer with us, was at Wrigley Field in 1945, the last time the Cubs hosted a World Series game. He was in the same place. And I was trying, I'm doing my best to pay attention to the game most of the time, but every once in a while I just have to look at the grass and look at the sky and think, this is what my grandfather was looking at, that many years ago. So I think we're kind of talking the same language here, Joe.
Yeah, the seats even feel the same. I would think because the stadium's been refreshed and all that, but they maintain that very historic feel.
It's true. Now I have something to play for you, and I want to see if you can identify exactly what this sound is. Are you ready? I think we're going to try to pipe this through the phone, so you should be able to hear it. Okay. This is a special sound you should be able to identify.
I think that's my living room.
That is your living room.
November 2nd. 2016.
So describe why there was so much screaming in your home.
Well, that was probably the highlight of my absolute baseball fandom of my entire life. My whole family are Cub fans, and I tried really hard for years not to make my sons Cub fans. I'm kidding, because I didn't know that they would ever win a World Series.
It's a hard life,
so in
yes.
2016, they finally win the World Series. So the reason they're screaming is because that was after the last out of the 2016 World Series, and that game was a microcosm of the entire Cubs fan career, the up and down and not knowing what was going to happen and thinking it was all going to fall away or fall apart, and then they find a way, thanks to Ben Zobrist, they find a way to win that game. And yes, I thought I would go crazy, but my family went absolutely crazy. I think the dog was going crazy.
That was such a beautiful sound. And now to people that would be like Cardinals fans or White Sox fans, they might not think it's quite as beautiful. I want to ask you this, though, real quick. I know through time you've been able to pay attention to, and it's not just players on our beloved Chicago Cubs, but the Cardinals as well, and probably about every team has some people on the team that are just absolutely sold out to Christ. What has it meant for you as somebody that has an interest in something that's not particularly spiritual like baseball, but then seeing people that are trying to live their life with God, every single day to sort of bring those two things together?
I think it's amazing because you have a thing like baseball where people do, especially younger people, like kids, look up to those players, and so to see those players giving their best, living with excellence, but also honoring God and the work that they do is they become great role models for these kids. Obviously, we don't want the kids to idolize them in any way, but people are watching people. And so if you have a platform that you're being watched at what you do, and you're able to give your life an example or live your life for Christ, and that's a great thing.
That's right. Well, that's your friend and mine, Joe B. from the Middays, and we could probably talk about this stuff all day, but it's nice to think about some of the memories that baseball brings to you on a day like the very first day of the spring of baseball, and I hope you have a very good day, my friend. We'll be listening to your show this afternoon.
Hey, thanks, Jonathan, and go Cubs.
All right.